So Ninas now, pay attention, Ninas.
The same Murtala Mohammed, on the same date in 66, July 29, when they began their decapitation of people, he toppled Gawan and became the head. And the first task he went into was to now codify all of what they had gotten by decree, by brigandate from that 67. So that unitary arrangement they had imposed was now processed into a draft constitution. That was the task Mwabweze and Rotimi Williams performed for them, that Obasanjo perfected for them. Head slave, Olusegun Obasanjo. And so what came out as 1979 constitution was commissioned by way of draft in November of 1975 by Murtala Mohammed, who was the head of the military wing of the caliphate. Otherwise, tell me why he was the one that led the charge in 66 and led the charge in 75 to take over. That constitution that came through that process was the full implementation of that Ahmadu Bello's battle script of 1960. Make a map of Nigeria, put all of the people who did one thing or the other to create this monster we have now. Put them on that map, and you will see where Gowon belongs. You will see where Murtala falls in his Kano. They may have come from somewhere, but that's where they said it was just like Abacha. Abacha is Kano, but they lived in Kano. So he was in Kano. That's how Nigeria dealt with him. I mean, Murtala Mohammed, that was why he was buried at the end of the day. So you put all the principal actors on the map of Nigeria. You will then see the inheritors from the caliphate side, the Buharis of this world, the Yaraduas of this world. I'm talking about the general now. You remember this? There was one general that Boko Haram shot in his residence in Maiduguri in those days. Those are the kind of people. So they come, you look at that map that is broken into four, you see them there. Then you come to the middle belt, you see the Gowons, you see the Dajumas, you see the Husseinis, you see the Garbas, Bamayi, brothers. So all such, look at where they are in the middle belt. Then the south as the conquered territory. And therefore, everything Obasanjo did for them was not of his own power. It was because he was, the slave master always appoints a head slave that enforces his will among the slaves, fighting for him, enforcing all kinds of evil. That's the role Obasanjo had played for them. And so, as head slave, he processed the wish of that caliphate as expressed by Murtala Mohammed into what became the 1979 constitution. Back to the subject of the day. You go to the preamble to that 1979 constitution. It's exactly a replica of what we have in 99. We the people, having formally and solemnly resolved to live in unity forever, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. In a situation where it was by decree that Obasanjo enacted what he enacted, and that what the Constituent Assembly had, deliberated even after the initial draft that came from Murtala's commission, the Constituent Assembly that was convened in 1977, Murtala Mohammed had been killed by his confederates in 1976, and so the draft that had been made out for him was what the Caliphate handed to Obasanjo to say, you must process this unadulterated to become constitution. And when you conduct the election, one of us, the Fulani, must become president. That was how Shagari became president. He didn't win no election. I'm sure he had about 12 to 30. And so the point of the day is that this 1979 constitution was not a product of the people. It was no different from the amalgamation because it was by military fire, dictated by the caliphate. So it unified Nigeria into 19 states because Murtala Mohammed had added to the 12 that were there before. It unified 19 states, defined everything, but there was no discussion amongst the people that were going to federate. It was now state and another state that were created by decree. So it wasn't even your project. And then they carried it forward in 1999. The story of 99 is too well known to bear any kind of reputation because by providence, in their hurry to get away with their loot, Absalom Abaka recruited Abacha's chief legal advisor called Awalu Yadudu. Some may say he's a professor. If you insist to calling him professor, I would then say quota Professor Awalu Yadudu. Abacha's chief legal advisor was the one who midwifed the emergence of that 1979 constitution as 1999, just adding all the states they had created because they had gone from 19 to 36 eventually. Bangladesh created some, Abacha created all that. And that was how it was in between, in that darkness, that they also loaded the local government that they just sat in their offices and carved out 774 in all, loading the majority of it to people who do not bring a dime to the table. You saw what the Supreme Court tried to do the other time. And many of us are thinking that Tinubu is in charge of anything. These are all the covenants he had with them. You look at some of the things that happened in the military. You look at some of the things that happened through the courts. These are the covenants he had with them to hand over our local communities to them. That's part of what Tinubu covenanted with the caliphate as condition for coronating him in an election he didn't win. And P2B is loafing all over the place. So something they could not do by National Assembly because people were now aware, people were now conscious of the games they were playing. They are trying to used the Supreme Court to rewrite the Constitution, because that, so those amendments, those parts of the Constitution that define those boundaries they impose, requires 4/5 majority to change. How are you going to raise 4/5 majority? And so they couldn't succeed through National Assembly. They now went in the direction of using the Supreme Court. And so we have discussed 3 rounds of unifying Nigeria without uniting. That uniting is where you identify the owners of the sovereignty across this vast territory. Yoruba land is not in dispute. The Yoruba people occupying Yoruba land. They could be country of their own, 60 million people today, if Nigeria were to fail. Why will Yoruba not be consulted? Why will it not be the decision of the Yoruba to be in union with the Igbo, to be in union with the Tiv or with the Fulani? That is what is at issue. That is what has to be resolved now. That is what nobody has been able to raise. Even the people that went to Lancaster House and who did the fight for independence, the ones who were still alive and active at the time we set up this process, they recognized that they did not quite understand the concept of sovereignty in terms of making sure that it is the owners of the lands, the indigenous, that's the distinct ethnic nationalities that had specific ancestral lands, who had to decide, who had to be the ones committing their sovereignty. They didn't understand it to that point. So they were satisfied that the British, that the foreigners have gone. Somehow people, all those boundaries, eastern region, western region, and then subsequently 12 states and 19 states and 36 states, everything was just flying in the air. It was when we came that we sat them down with our knowledge of jurisprudence, broke it down, and they say, hey, no wonder we were swindled in 1960. We didn't know this. And so we began to organize to identify the owners of the sovereignty: small Isoko, small Ishekiri, small Ogoni, medium Urobo, medium Ijo, medium Tiv, big Yoruba, big Igbo, big Hausa. We said, look, every land in Nigeria is owned by one group or the other. There's no loose end in that. Everybody, every single inch belongs to people you can identify. The British avoided them, sidestepped them in arriving at 1914. So they were unified by fiat, by decree. The process that went from 1967, culminating in 1979, again included all of them, unified them into the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But they were not united, because it is only by going to do that thing you saw in that preamble that they can be united. It will be of their own volition. They will be the ones submitting their land and their people, that is their sovereignty, in self-determination. Self-determination meaning that they were the ones who decided. And if you want to know what they decide, go back to that preamble. What do you see there? We, the Yoruba of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved with the Tiv, the Igbo, the Ijo, to be one political union that will not divide in the near future, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. Until that statement becomes true, because there has been a discussion and a negotiation, it is that discussion and negotiation that they are running away from. That's why they are looking for the Appian way. They bring Olisabakoba to come and tell them rubbish. They bring Emeka Nyoko to come and give them another route. They bring Efeponda to come and draft constitution and all kinds of nonsense. But we have that constitution in a chokehold. Our signature cannot continue to sit on a document we did not make, that will now become titled document, that has become titled document in the hands of an enemy that is determined to execute all of us. That's what unitary Nigeria has been, a monster that feeds on the blood of the constituents. But it is our signature that is sitting there and sustaining it. The fact of union, that we are now in union, is on account of the false claim that we the people, we the Ijo, we the Ogoni, we the Igbo, we the Yoruba. So we say we never met at the time we set up this process. Some of us may not know the gravity of what has happened, but the international community knows, because we had to go to inform them all the way to the UN Security Council, all the way to places of decision making across Washington. We went to the nationalities. We didn't leave any side out, including the Fulani that are causing the mayhem. We set up a meeting of the owners of Nigeria. That's what came out as Pronaco. It was a 20-year plan. We knew it took more than 250 years to lock us down, even before the British came. From the time Ahmadu Bello and co, Mondamfodi and co jumped into Gober in 1804. Of course, the Portuguese had come and gone in some way. Everybody was coming to poke, but eventually it was what Mondamfodi was doing from that flank and what the British began to do in the early 19th century that became, the colonization that we found ourselves in after Berlin Conference. And so that confiscation of our lands and the conscription of our peoples into a union that was not to be discussed or defined or negotiated, they've escaped 3 rounds. The one the British did in 1914, the one Murtala Mohammed and his co-travelers, aided by Gowon and Obasanjo, who concluded it for them in 1979, and the one Absalam Abubakar, aided by Awalu Yadudu, in 1999. And so the reason we're breaking these things down in this manner is for all of those who are fed up up with what Nigeria is dishing out to them. Whether they are killing you in the Middle Belt, or they seize your oil and gas in the Joland, or they are threatening you in Yoruba land, or imposing people who are ruining your lives as governors, because it is that constitution that enable all those things. You can't do your road, you can't elect who will govern you, you can't even decide whether you want to be in union with anybody, because the people who owe it a duty of faith, the ones who impose sharia in their own space, and who owe it a duty of faith to kill others as infidel. You put my signature on a document I had nothing to do with, I've never seen or heard about. You put my signature there to say I'm the one that agreed to be in union with a Buhari that whose allegiance is with his own faith and his own feudal neighborhood. So we are in a union of master and servant that does not respect the sanctity of life because of Sharia. So it has to be my decision to be in union with them. And the remedy available to all of those who are crying across the length of breadth of Nigeria is called self-determination. Self-determination is an incident of your sovereignty. Your sovereignty is your sovereignty. That is the ultimate right to control that ancestral land. That is what is called sovereignty. You have the highest say. Nobody can come to tell you anything there. So that right to have that highest say is what is called self-determination. So if you are going to be in union, it has to be you standing on your land, your big Ijo land, your small Ogoni land, your small Isoko land, the big Yoruba land. It must be Yoruba people standing in Yoruba land as the owners of the sovereignty that Yoruba land represents, unburdened by Nigeria, uninhibited by Nigeria. The same thing, Ijo people standing on Ijo land, the ancestral space, now federating, negotiating to be in one political union with others. That is what has to happen. And if it's not happening soon enough, the reason we went so slowly across these many years was that we had to talk to everybody. We had to get those who were not on speaking terms to begin to speak to themselves and make a map of their own territory to create internal cohesion, because the British and the Caliphate set them up one against the other. You needed to see the number of wars that the Tiv and the Jukun were fighting. Today, Theophilus Danjuma is one running helter-skelter to see how the killings in Tivland can stop. But before then, it was Jukun and Tiv day and night. Igbo should not be allowed to come near Ogoni land. Ken Sarowa eventually lost his life to the people who rallied him into that wickedness. Abacha slept on the same camp beds with Ken Sarowa throughout that period of the war. They made him administrator of Boni province. Go and check what the territory that they called Boni in that eastern region. Go and check. More than the states there today. And then when his eyes began to open and he began to talk about what right Ogoni will have and what right others will not have, he became the enemy, and they framed him, hung him, and melted his body with acid. The fellow that did it, his name is Dauda Komo, Lieutenant Colonel. Search around, you will find him. These are the kind of monsters that gathered to dance and wine to celebrate their great general, Yakubu Gowon. And so, by this meeting of today, we're informing ourselves that the issue, that joint jailbreak that is building up to happen, because the Nigeria defined by that constitution, to the extent that that constitution is a fraud, and we have shown it to be a fraud to those who are the victims of that fraud. That's the constituent components of Nigeria, the owners of the sovereignties that are confiscated and conscripted. That title deed, which is a forgery and a fraud, can no longer be basis of any union. As of today, we do not have any union. I'm sure you had Ayadebanjo shouting it in Lagos at the Colonial of Emeka Anyoku. I'm sure you had people saying it on TV. You had Kingsley Moghalu saying it. We have no union. You had Professor Akinwale saying we have no project. Let us go and agree. You had Dixon, Senator Sirake Dixon, former governor of Bayelsa. You had him saying it on Arise TV that the constitution is a fraud. We have no union.
Yep, we have no union. So stop the lies. Stop the lies. We have no union. We thank God for our brother who is ever speaking for us. I mean, if this is how history class are being taught, my dear Manila, all our historians, and then they're telling us to go and do ba when other people are holding us hostage. It was never about the economy of Nigeria. It was never about the lack of infrastructure. It was never about anything. It's always like, wait for God, have a hope, become a hope addict. Wait for God, he will do it for you. Keep clapping and barbering in the middle of the night and all will be well. And we will tell you guys that these people are partners in crime. They are still committing crimes against our people. They are so unrepentant as we are speaking. They are planning to pray for a rebirth of a crime against humanity called Nigeria. A sin against humanity called Nigeria. A prison yard that is holding the smartest people in an open air prison. These criminal pastors are still going around saying they want to pray for a rebirth of a new nation. My people, when are we going to wake up and salute these people in the appropriate way, the way the ancestors will do it? How do we answer these criminals, parading as men of devil. Let me not get excited. We have work to do today. Our topic is so much in line with what we're going. They will never stop until we stop them. I need Rega Israeli style. You slap us, we release a nuke. We're not doing slap. We need to treat them that way. Besides, they've stolen all the resources and they're hanging all over. They're waiting for any because they know they were never there to lead the people. It was never, ever, ever about our people. It has always been about them and their families. Every time this governor will finish, the other governor will go in, and our people are going backwards. We gave you guys a calculation of how many years a child that is born during Tinubu's term. By the time the interim president finishes his shenanigan, that child will be 8 years of age. Then we allow Wike, the terrorist himself, to come in, because then it will be his turn. Then the child will be 16 years. Look at Wike, the drunkard, the man that cannot manage a wife and 3 children. Then we will allow another criminal to come out. Our child will become 24 years. And you guys think this is okay? Mothers, fathers, aunts, sisters, you guys praying for Nigeria to continue to exist under these circumstances? Oh, I forgot. You have a strategy to blackmail God so he can come and do it for you. Well, I have news for you. You guys will learn the hard way because he ain't coming. You'll be waiting another 500 years.